The UK government are rolling out low traffic networks throughout Britain. I think 320 local authorities in the UK are at various stages of developing low traffic networks. Now they're saying that they're doing it in order to combat climate change and pollution. And then there are others who say, no, wait a minute, I'm not sure I want to be paying local government for the right to move about freely in my own city. And perhaps the fines that are being levied for non-payment have no basis whatsoever. That's what I'm going to be talking about in this video.
Take the first step towards online privacy. Get NordVPN.
I invested £25,000. Today, that investment is worth £5 million.
Say hello to our hero, the Hydrogen Energy Release Optimizer. Limitless power, zero emissions.
Hi everybody, this is Crypto Rich, working with you to get rich with crypto, filling our pockets with crypto profits. Although in this video, hopefully we shall be filling our pockets with freedom. So just to let you know straight up front, I am opposed to the local traffic networks, completely opposed. And I see in them the same strategies that governments are using. It's the same conversation that the perpetrators of abuse use with the families that I work with as a social worker. It's the same conversation, one's at a level of family and the others at a level of local government and central government. And essentially it's this. You know, if someone's out to abuse a child or a woman or whoever, right, they're not going to make it up front. No, they're going to pretend that it's for your own good. No, this really is for your own good. All the while reeling in any freedom, any liberty, any agency. And that's how the low traffic networks work. And I'm going to say something at the end, that if it was really about pollution, if it was really about carbon dioxide, there is something that they could be doing that's a whole lot cheaper, a lot less controversial, way more effective, which would have a whole lot more support, couldn't be used as a Trojan horse, as the low traffic network system is being used as a Trojan horse to bring in a system of surveillance. That's what's being constructed. Spy cameras everywhere, on pedestrian crossings, on junctions, on entry points, because eventually when all 320 local authorities, should they fulfill on their plan, and I don't think they will, I don't think they'll succeed, is we're going to have all the country broken up into 15-minute cells where people can't travel outside of those 15 minutes by walking distance without having to pay fines. Now this is incredibly regressive, because it's going to penalize the poor, the elderly, small businesses, struggling small businesses, as if they don't have enough to deal with anyway with the cost of living crisis. And then it's going to penalize the poor, who'll have to pay more, not just for the fees, but they'll have to pay more for the goods and services. You know, if you need a plumber, the plumber's going to have to add on the fines or the cost that they're going to have to pay to travel about, which means it's going to punish the poor more because they're going to have to pay more for those kind of basic services. Now, there is a way out. There actually is a way out. And one of the things that I've been digging into over the last few months is some of the incredible protections that the British Constitution has. Now, surprise, we're not taught these. I wonder why. I've been digging in, and I'm going to go through some of the laws that protect us, that ensure that they cannot do what they're doing, and that actually mean that we don't have to pay any fines whatsoever. For this video, I'm indebted to Richard Vobes. I have had the privilege of being on his channel to talk about home education, and I invite you to subscribe and stuff. Subscribe to him on Odyssey, because it's better to support censorship resistant platforms. And by the way, you should also subscribe to me on Odyssey, bit.ly/CryptoRichOdyssey, and follow me on Twitter and join my official Telegram announcements channel. And this video I'm probably not going to post on YouTube because YouTube's rather touchy. One of the things about Richard is that he's been posting quite a few videos about Britain's legal tradition, common law and legislation, and our rights within common law. Now, what is common law? Common law is law that evolved as a function of decisions by courts, but it's predicated on something else, which I'll tell you in a moment. Legislation are the rules, the statutes, the acts that are drawn by Parliament. Now, Parliament is meant to represent people, and there's an act, which I'll go into, which actually says that the Parliament can only produce acts and statutes that are consistent with our natural birthright and with common law. So you have common law, and then giving rise to, evolving from that, you have legislation, statutes, and And then you have primary legislation, which is the acts of parliament, and then statutory instruments, which means ministers can just change the rules and stuff, but they've given themselves that power within primary legislation, and primary legislation overrides statutory instruments and regulations and guidance and policy. But before that, you have common law, which, like I said, came about through decisions of courts and juries, right? But before that, you have natural law. People naturally assumed, of course they assumed, that they had the right to travel, they had the right to marry, they had the right to not be subjected to harm, to not be defrauded. Those are natural, inalienable, indubitable rights, and they form the basis of common law, and that form the basis of legislation. So Rich has been doing a whole bunch of videos digging into them, and there's this one in particular with a Canadian guy, Stan McDonald, Ulez Buster, and I invite you to listen to that video, because he goes through some of the laws that are still in place in Britain that give us protections. And as I was listening to the video, I went to the government website to check these out myself, and I'll go through those with you. Now, the other website that I recommend, or the other channel, is the Peacekeepers channel, and this is by a couple of people. Mark Horn and his colleague, I'm afraid I don't know his name, and I will recommend you subscribe to their channel as well, because they go through the common law and legislation and what our rights are. Like, for example, this whole issue of whether Parliament is sovereign, because that came about with the with Brexit. Is Parliament sovereign? Actually, Parliament's not sovereign. People are sovereign, but we're not taught that. Surprise, surprise. So have a look at that. They have set up this peacekeepers.org.uk. Learn to restore your human rights. This is a free course. It's completely free, which will educate you about British law. Now, British law underpins the law of many other jurisdictions, probably all the Commonwealth countries. So that would be India, Pakistan, which is former Commonwealth, the United States, which was part of the which was a British colony at one point, and the US Constitution borrows from the English Constitution. Canada, Australia, New Zealand. So this would apply to those jurisdictions as well. And it's completely free. I haven't done it. I am looking at doing it myself and going through the course and learning a bit more myself. Kudos to the peacekeepers.org.uk, because it is going to take us as people gathering together, educating ourselves, uniting, creating decentralized structures so that we can reassert our sovereignty and not have the WEF and their puppets steal it from us. Now, the first thing I want to come to is the Bill of Rights, 1688. Actually, no, before that, sorry, the contents of the Magna Carta. Now, the Magna Carta is Latin for Great Charter, and this is from the UK Parliament website, and was first used in 1217. Now, it was amended a few times, and it had 63 clauses. For the main part, the clauses do not deal with legal principles, but instead relate to the regulation of feudal customs and the operation of the justice system. 4 of the clauses are still valid today, and these clauses, the most famous clauses are clauses 39 and 40, and they are still valid today. No free man shall be seized, imprisoned, dispossessed, outlawed, exiled or ruined in any way, nor in any way proceeded against, except by the lawful judgment of his peers and the law of the land. So according to my reading, I'm not legally qualified, right? I'm just a layperson discovering this myself, right? So please correct me, give me, any contributions, amendments in the comments below. That will help. No free man shall be seized, imprisoned, dispossessed, outlawed, exiled, or ruined in any way, nor in any way proceeded against, except by the lawful judgment of his peers and the law of the land. Now, law is distinct from legislation. Law refers to common law and natural law. Legislation refers to acts and statutes. So this means that we cannot be fined except where we've been found guilty of something by the judgment of our peers, i.e. a jury. So, for example, a speeding ticket, a parking ticket, a Ulez ticket. So you drive around London. At the end of August, they're going to start them. You drive around London, well, they can't just send you a fine just because they fancy it. They don't have the power to do so, because this is still in effect. And then to no one will we sell, to no one will we deny or delay right or justice. So that you have the right to have summary, fast justice. It cannot be denied to you. Cannot just be found convicted of something or be liable to face a penalty without being convicted of something where you've been judged to be guilty of that offence by your peers. So that's the Magna Carta, 1297. It's still in effect. We have this, the Bill of Rights, 1688 Bill of Rights. This is also in effect. And essentially, this was an agreement between the people, represented by, I think, 25 barons, and William and Mary. I didn't really enjoy history at school, so I've had to learn history again, right? The kings and queens of England. I say learn again, I never learned it in the first place because I just found it really dull, but I'm now getting the relevance of it. So that the people of the day weren't happy with, I think, King James. He was taxing people without their agreement or anything. Without going into the detail, he was replaced. William and Mary from Holland were invited to come over to become the king and queen, and this agreement was made between them and William and Mary. and I've taken notes here of the relevant sections. This is still current. It hasn't been repealed or amended. Here we go. All grants and promises of fines and forfeitures of particular persons before conviction are illegal and void. So if I get a Ulez ticket or an LTN ticket through the post saying, listen, you drove through this area, you know, it's a notice of intended prosecution, i.e. we're letting you know we intend to prosecute you unless you pay us some money. Well, that to me sounds like a gangster shakedown. You know, that's what it is, right? Give us some money and we won't bash you over the head. Give us some money and we won't proceed with the prosecution. And most people just give in because they don't know what their rights are. So that's one, that all grants and promises of fines and forfeitures of particular persons before conviction are illegal and void, which kind of makes sense. 1700 Acts of Settlement, which distinguishes law from legislation. The laws and statutes of the realm confirmed. And whereas the laws of England are the birthright of the people thereof, i.e. we are born with these rights. We're not given them by government. We already have them. We're born with them. The right to express ourselves, the right to marry, the right to engage in trade, the right to move about. All the kings and queens who shall ascend the throne of this realm ought to administer the government of the same according to the said laws, and all their officers and ministers ought to serve them respectively according to the same. The said laws, spiritual and temporal and commons, the House of Lords and the House of Commons, do therefore humbly pray that all the statutes and laws and statutes of this realm for securing the established religion and the rights and liberties of the people thereof, and all the other laws and statutes of the same now in force, may be ratified and confirmed. So essentially what I think this is saying, and my oldie English is not that great, is that one, it separates laws from statutes. So you have laws and you have statutes, and the two are distinct, but that the laws and the statutes have to be consistent with the birthright of people. So you can't torture people. We have a right not to be tortured or to not be imprisoned just because the government thinks so. We can't be fined just because the government thinks so. That's my read of it. Now, before I go to the next section, let me show you how you can get the PDF of this, right? So if you scroll up to the page and you click on print options, this opens up and you get the PDF, and there it is. And then I can do Control F to find this passage. Now let's go back to the Bill of Rights for some other bits here. No declarations or judgments, doings or proceedings to the prejudice of the people in any of the said premises or in any wise to be drawn hereafter into consequence or example. Now what I understand from this passage is it means that we can't have our rights prejudiced in any way whatsoever hereafter, so in perpetuity. And like I said, this hasn't been repealed, it hasn't been amended, it's still in force. And this bit, also in the Bill of Rights, that all and singular the rights and liberties asserted and claimed in the said declaration are the true, ancient, and indubitable rights and liberties of the people of this kingdom, and so shall be esteemed, allowed, adjudged, deemed, and taken to be, and that all and every the particulars aforesaid shall be firmly and strictly holden and observed as they are expressed in the said declaration. So these are ancient and indubitable rights and liberties of people, so they can't be taken away. They precede common law, they precede parliament, they're before all of that, and they have to be allowed and taken to be, and they have to be held to and observed as they're expressed in this declaration, which is the Bill of Rights, 1688. Then there's this one, the Union with England Act 1707, and this was an act that joined the two kingdoms of Scotland and England. And Article 4, that all subjects of the United Kingdom of Great Britain shall from and after the Union have full freedom of intercourse, of trade and navigation to and from any port or place within the said United Kingdom and the dominions and plantations thereunto belonging, and that there be a communication of all other rights, privileges and advantages which do or may belong to the subjects of either kingdom, except where it is otherwise expressly agreed in these articles. Now the key bit here is that the subjects of the UK shall have full freedom and intercourse of trade and navigation to and from any port or place within the said United Kingdom. We have full freedom to travel around and to engage in trade as we wish to, according to this, the 1707 Union with England Act, and it hasn't been superseded or amended subsequently. And tie it in with the rights within the Bill of Rights, that we cannot be fined without conviction, and in the Act of Settlement, which says that all subsequent legislation has to be consistent with our natural laws, has to be consistent with our birthright. And there is no way government can take away our birthrights, because you can't have a situation where Parliament or any government can do whatever they like to the people, that is the pathway to tyranny. And the protections within the English Constitution, within the British Constitution, I think are such that they prevent that, because we can pretty much do whatever we want, provided we don't do harm to another, we don't defraud, and that we act openly and honestly. Then Article 25, that all laws and statutes in either kingdom so far as they are contrary to or inconsistent with the terms of these articles, or any of them shall from and after the union cease and become void, and shall be so declared to be by the respective parliaments of the said kingdoms. So this is, I think this is in 2 bits, right? That all laws and statutes in either kingdom, as they're contrary to any of the articles within, so the ones that are already in place, are going to be voided. But also, any of them shall from and after the union cease and become void, and shall be so declared to be by the respective parliaments. Any of them shall from and after the union. So any laws and statutes that are contrary to the act of union shall become void. So that means any law or statute that restricts our movement. Now the London Council and other councils aren't using statute to limit our movements. They're using secondary legislation. So like I said, you have natural law, then you have common law, then you have primary legislation, like laws and acts, legislation and statutes passed by Parliament. And in those legislation acts, they give themselves powers, statutory instruments, and the ability to create rules and regulations. It's this bit at the top that the local authorities are using to impose fines for LTNs and Ulez. But it cannot override primary legislation. And this, the Act of Union is primary legislation. The Act of Settlement is primary legislation. The Bill of Rights is primary legislation, but what that does and the Act of Settlement does is it enshrines in law our natural birthrights, which includes the right to travel, to move about, and to not be fined or levied any fine without conviction by a jury of our peers. Now, unless we begin to assert our rights and make this known to other people, then they are going to imprison us in these 15-minute cities. What there is for us to do is to educate ourselves about our rights, learn about common law, learn about natural rights, go and do the Peacekeepers course, and share this video, talk to people, go join the various campaigning groups to get rid of LTNs, because we have to stop LTNs. They will take away the right to protest, the right to organize. They will kill commerce, leave us inside these open-air ghettos where we are reliant on the government for giving us our little bit of ration of bugs, provided we have the 24th injection that's been mandated, that's been ordered that week. Now, I said if they were really, really serious about the LTNs, if the LTNs really were about combating pollution and getting rid of carbon dioxide, because there's too much carbon dioxide, there's a very simple solution that's much, much cheaper, way less controversial, and way more effective. You know what it is? Plant trees. Just plant trees. Loads and loads of trees. Everybody loves trees. Yeah, autumn you have leaf fall, but no problem. You'll have wildlife teeming in the trees, right? You'll become an oasis in the hot, hot cities. It'll provide shelter for human beings and for animals and birds. It'll capture the carbon. You have trees that clean the air of its pollution. And everybody loves trees. They're good for us. They're good for the planet. But what you can't have with trees is spy cameras. That's the problem with trees. It's not about pollution. It's about imprisonment. And therefore what we must do is fill our pockets with freedom and raise our voices for freedom. This is Crypto Rich signing out. All the best. Bye-bye.